What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm your host, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard. How you doing, Kyle?
Good. Brian, I know you're excited about video, but put your shirt back on. Okay, come on.
Please.
We're trying to keep it professional.
Please.
You look good, all right? That's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, he's just
put the shirt back on.
For audio listeners, he's just, like standing there still, completely still. He's got his, not his Elgato, this is falling apart. Brian Shea, how you doing? What's going on?
And I'm actually wearing two shirts, so I don't know what Kyle is talking about.
Yeah, now that we
and me here, Brian, what are you doing? Come on.
But it is interesting that we can see each other. This is new again for me. It's been a year since we've done video?
It's been a week.
It's been
Brian.
Yeah, it's been a week. Before that, it maybe like 8 months, 9 months, something like that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Good to see your beautiful faces once again.
I don't like to relax ever, so having the camera on me at all times it's good to be back, Always on.
I don't need a camera for not being able to relax. My anxiety does a good job.
Yeah,
of that.
Perfect. Charles Hart, how you doing, Charles?
Hello, I'm good. I'm really glad nobody asked me to put my shirt back on.
Yeah.
We're all comfortable like that.
Yeah.
Yours can stay off. You're good.
Today we're going to be talking about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That's why I gathered this very specific crew of people. We're all big fans of Breath of the Wild. We're going to talk about Shea's hands-on impressions from Tears of the Kingdom. Then in the latter half of the show, Matt Miller is going to be joining us to talk about his Jedi Survivor review. But first, big news in the world of Game Informer. You want to support us. Maybe you don't. Maybe, you don't like your mailbox being full. You don't.
Don't invite this, Alex.
Here's what I'm trying to say. Right now, and forevermore, hopefully, you go to GameStop.com/GameInformer. Not only are you going to see, I think they have our recent reviews that are positive on there. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can now buy single issues of Game Informer for $5.99 a piece. GameStop.com/GameInformer. If you want a single issue, we now do that. And right now we have our three most recent issues. So our Resident Evil 4 issue is $5.99. Dead Island 2, $5.99. And our indie issue with the Sea of Stars cover is $5.99. And I am told that our Diablo cover is coming very soon.
But Alex, what if I want 12 issues that come all at once?
Oh, then you can go to GameInformer.com/magazine and get all the info you need to sign up for a yearly subscription, which I believe is $14.99 a year.
And I apologize because I completely bungled that easy softball question because I was getting notifications on my screen and I completely messed up. They don't come all at once. They come every several weeks.
Yes.
One at a time.
This may be small, but I'm actually really genuinely very happy about this. To be able to sell single issues now, a few. I don't know how far we're going to go back with this and that kind of thing, but it's such a simple thing that I'm glad we've finally been able to implement. It's overdue. Yeah,
I think there's only so many subscriptions people have room for in their life, and I'm a big proponent of all the software I use all the time. I'm like, could I please just buy this and not have to worry about a subscription? So if you're one of those people, you just want to buy the issues that you're interested in, you have that option now. Again, GameStop.com/GameInformer.
It's great news for my mom, who always wants to see the issues I'm in, but she doesn't want a GameStop rewards program.
That's fair.
Now, if I do a big thing, I'm like, Mom, I got
Here you
great
go.
news for you, and it costs $6.
Yep, absolutely. Well, with that out of the way, let's get into business. Shea, you recently flew to New York City,
Sunny Manhattan,
and you played Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for an hour, 2 hours, more than any of us on the call.
So it's complicated. Okay, so I got there.
Okay.
And I had a 20 or 15 minute hands-off demo, I would say, and then a 15-minute hands-on session, and then another hour-long hands-on session. So over an hour.
Okay, cool.
What was that first presentation like? Was that Onuma talking about the game or something?
No, it was a Nintendo Treehouse member who.
Okay, gotcha.
And I did ask him. I was like, "Have you beaten this game?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." So he has beaten Tears of the Kingdom, but
it can be completed.
It
Okay,
can be
we know that. We can add that. All right.
And yeah, he just kind of was giving. It was basically the same area that Aonuma's gameplay demo took place in, but he did things a little bit differently. Like there was one moment where, like like the boat section where like Aonuma put together the 3 logs and then put fans on the back of it to like blow across. This guy was like, all right, well, here, I'm going to build that same boat that Mr. Aonuma built. And he put it in, like, the logs didn't go together the way he wanted. And he's like, oh, so what you can do in this case is you can, while still in Ultra Hand, jiggle the right stick back and forth, and that detaches the logs. So, like, it detaches the last attachment that you made. So if you make a mistake, you can just undo it that way. And then...
to do undo. Did you guys know you could do that?
What was that?
I always do it accidentally.
Yeah. I hate it.
So what he did instead of having the fans was he decided to open up a quick access menu. They're called Zonai devices. And some of them are lying around the world. Other ones, you could just have them in your inventory. And he went into this quick access menu using the D-pad and brought out rockets. So he attached 2 rockets to the back of the boat. And instead of kind of just like sailing across the way Aonuma did, he like got on the boat, and all you have to do is whack it with your weapon. You hit one of them on the vehicle, and it activates all the Zonai devices that you've attached to your vehicle at once. And that sent the boat just flying across the river, like literally
Brian,
airborne.
You must be confused. Alex asked you to describe your time with Zelda, not a bizarre fever dream you had last night. It doesn't make sense. This is so wild to me. It's so bizarre. Like we've seen. Oh god.
Do you have any sense, Shay, of the limits of Ultra Hand and Fuse? Like, if I wanted to add like 7 or 8 logs together, is it gonna let me instead of like 2 or 3? You know.
I mean, I don't know what the limits are for Ultra Hand. I know for Fuse there is 1 slot per weapon or shield, and like so, and like each item has the potential to increase like durability, damage, or give it a special property.
Yeah.
So like there was one example where like he had like a sword and there was a cracked wall in front of him. And normally in a Zelda game, you see a cracked wall, you throw a bomb at it and that opens it. In this case, he attached like a stone to the end of the sword, and it gave it the property that it can break through cracked walls. So he ran up to it and hit it a couple of times, and it opened the wall, and it was able to go into that cave. And then like one thing that I did, I was like, I'm going to see how like weird I can get with these fusions. I went and like I took the fan that like Aonuma had fused or used Ultra Hand to combine with a boat. I took a similar fan and attached it to my shield. And every time I raised my shield, it actually blew enemies backwards. And I actually blew one off of the island, which was kind of funny.
That's awesome.
But of course, because there's weapon durability and shield durability, every time I had the fan on, it was actually degrading the shield. So it broke really fast. So you have to be kind of mindful of that. And there's actually a separate like kind of energy resource. I think they're called Zonai charges. That's like a secondary bar that appears whenever you're using a Zonai device. It's like in like the middle bottom of the screen. And like if you have any Zonai device working at all, it depletes that and it recharges back up to like the amount that you have. I'm assuming you're going to be able to upgrade that like you do with your stamina bar and your hearts in Breath of the Wild. But like you can
so it's
also
attached to Link as opposed to attached to the individual items.
Correct. And
interesting. Okay.
But you can find Zonai charges like as a resource around the world, and you can either use those as additional Zonai charge energy, or you can trade them in. I'm sure you saw this in the trailer where there was kind of like it looks like a gacha machine.
Mm-hmm.
Those are called Zonai device dispensers, and you can trade Zonai charges that you find around the world into those. And then it spits out like a capsule machine, almost randomized Zonai devices. And there's all kinds of stuff. Like there was like a portable cooking pot. So like if you're not anywhere near like a campfire with a cooking pot, you can actually deploy a one-time use cooking pot, and it's a Zonai device, and just cook wherever you are, which is kind of cool.
Portable cooking pot is the exact kind of thing that like all this other stuff we're talking about, very good, very new, very cool. Portable cooking pot, I'm like, man, that's gonna save
Charles, there's also
time.
recipe cards now.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, like full on illustrated recipes so you can keep track of
Like in the menu?
Yeah.
Wild.
And I know this because I'm editing Shay's video, the video component to his piece with the B-roll, and
Brian,
I saw it. And I was like, whoa.
Did you still have all the items from the original game? Did you still have bombs and freezing and magnet?
Not that I
releases?
saw.
So okay, all right. But we still don't. You don't know if those are gonna come back again.
Yeah, so the ones that I had at my disposal were Fuse, which is the weapons and shields to items.
Okay.
Ultra Hand, which is combining items around the world, Zonai devices with like other things you can make like vehicles and stuff.
So Fuse and Ultra Hand, two separate things, right?
Yes, Fuse is
that was something I
specific
was
to shield and weapons, and Ultra Hand is like pretty much any other inanimate objects that you want to combine, and often used for vehicles. But I used them for like solving puzzles and stuff like that as well. And then there's Recall, where like any moving inanimate object, you can freeze time, target it, and then rewind it. So there was one where like I had to storm a bokoblin camp, and there was this moblin that like was tossing explosive barrels my way, and it actually killed me alongside this rolling spiked ball that the other bokoblins sent down a hill. And I was like, oh my god, like what I guess I could have been stealthier, but what else should I have done there? And like I quickly, like, because I fell into my Breath of the Wild habits of like, okay, I'm gonna sneak up on them and like fight them with my sword and whatever. And I was like, oh wait, I have all these other like new abilities at my disposal, and that's really going to be the challenge, I think, is rewiring your brain to use these new abilities. And I had that both in exploration, combat, and even like puzzle solving, where it was like I need to like think with these like new abilities. And in my preview, the kind of the parallel that I drew with like as I played more and more, and this very, very early sequence, by the way, it's not even like I was like playing like late game stuff. This was like early stuff, so probably just like the fundamentals of where these mechanics are going. And even then, I was like starting to get that feeling that I had with like the Portal series, where I was just like, oh, I'm gonna have to kind of like destroy my brain and like rebuild it from the ground up in order to like fully wrap my head around how like all these mechanics are going to coalesce and interact with one another. Like it really felt familiar in that way, even though like the abilities are drastically different and almost encourage you to break like the physics of this game.
I saw something in the gameplay they sent us, Shay, and I'm prepared to cut it out of the podcast if we can't talk about it. But it looked like you could throw down your own custom fast travel points.
Yes. So there is a, I forget what it's called. I have my notes here somewhere. But yeah, there is one, at least on mine, I had a one fast travel point that you can throw down. And that way, like if you fall off of the island, I'm trying to look in my notes here to see if I had it, you can just instantly return to it.
Was that one of the Zonai things?
It's called a travel medallion. It's just its own thing. It's like an item that you can just like place. Like I did that as I went from island to island. I would place. You can recall it by just going into the map. Like you can select it, say like recall travel medallion, and then it's back in your inventory, and then you can place another one down.
Right. This was in Breath of the Wild.
I was going to say, yeah.
It was?
Yeah, it was in the Master Trials DLC.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Well, that's cool.
It's nice to see you have it from the beginning, because that was in Breath of the Wild is one of those things where I was like, wow, this is great. Could have used this 200 hours ago. So
Yeah.
I basically just left it at my house, you know? But that's cool. That's cool that that's there.
That does make me ask, when you look at the map, are there like 2 layers of map?
I didn't get a whole lot of time like spent like looking at the map, but because I would say 95% of my time up on in the demo is up in the islands. So whenever I opened the map, it looked like it was just the Sky Islands. So there must be 2 layers there.
I can confirm this.
Okay.
I have watched the footage that we were sent like multiple times over. Like, yes, there are. It's like, think of like a game where like there are multiple floors and you can like change the floor that you're looking at. It's like that. It's like, I don't know, whatever, like the normal Hyrule, and then the Skylands or whatever is a separate Sky Islands is a separate map. But it's kind of like translucent a little, so you can still kind of see the first, like the bottom, the earth a little bit. But yeah.
So the way that I completely lost the thread earlier when I was talking about like approaching that Bokoblin camp, so I can pick that back up.
I know we got so excited. We're just like, we know someone who's played Tears of the Kingdom. We gotta ask him questions.
So basically, like I went back a second attempt at storming this camp, and like the Moblin picked up the explosive barrel and threw it my way. And what I did was I used recall. I had recall equipped, and when he threw it, when you select recall, it actually slows time like really, really slow. So I just selected, I looked up at the airborne explosive barrel, selected it, and like had it fly right back at him. It exploded upon impact and also made the other barrels that were near him explode. So that took him out. And then I saw the spiked ball rolling down the hill at me. And I was like, all right, well, I bet I could do the same thing with that. So I did that, and it rewound it back up. And we saw that in one of the earliest trailers where it was like Link rewound time on the one specific object, and it went back and like took out some of the Bokoblins that were running downhill after it. And, you know, it didn't kill them, but like it was able to like knock out significant chunks of their health. So like I thinned the numbers a little bit. And then I got up there and I was like, okay, I'm going to take this camp. And there were like 9 or 10 Bokoblins like up there. And like there was a giant one that had a horn that was like riling them up. And I was like, all right, this might be harder than I thought. So like I had like more explosive barrels that were up in the camp. So I tried using Ultra Hand to like relocate them and put them like between them and me, and then try to like blow them up using like a fire property arrow, because you could fuse. I started fusing like fire onto the arrows to have like fire arrows, and I started trying to blow up the explosive barrels using those, and it like took out a couple of them. But I was like, all right, this is a fool's errand. I'm probably gonna die again, so I just made a break for it. And I can't say much about like how I got to the Sky Islands, because it's not a way that we've shown or that they've shown in the past. But I can say I experienced a new way to reach the Sky Islands. That is all I can say.
Is this like an embargo, like a limitation that they?
Yes, this is a limitation they set, and like what I can and cannot talk about in my gameplay session.
Okay.
That's fascinating, because in the first game you couldn't get to the Sky Islands at all. So hearing that there's a new way is really exciting.
A new way that you have not seen in a trailer.
Okay.
Is Ultra Hand like I know we've talked about using it to like make vehicles and stuff. Is it like magnesis also? Like, can you just telekinesis stuff around?
Yeah, just pretty much any inanimate object. Like, well, not any, but like a lot of inanimate objects. So
Human beings?
No human beings, because those would be animate objects.
Maybe corpses.
Yeah, I guess so.
So there was a puzzle that on like I think it was like the third island of my second demo, where it was like there were 2 pools of water, and there was like a concrete slab blocking the water from flowing down into the next one. And I had to use Ultra Hand to lift the concrete slab, which let water flow down into it. But then it ended up falling, and like another waterfall replenished it. And I was trying to get the treasure chest that was at the bottom of the thing. So what I ended up doing was I lifted it up, let it fall. Then I used recall in order to have it go back up. And then using Ultra Hand on a nearby log, I slid it into the brackets that were on there, fused it together with Ultra Hand, and then it held up on the brackets. So it was because it was evenly distributed. Because if you have it too heavy or off balance, the connection will actually break on Ultra Hand. So
This is too much, Brian. This is too much.
So that made it so the water kept flowing down to the bottom pool and let me get the treasure chest. So like it's stuff that's gonna break your brain in certain times. Like and there's another one where it was like it was a platform that like it was almost like one of the shrines in Breath of the Wild, where like you had like a little tiny like kind of statue, and then it just looked like the platform that was in front of you, and you had to rotate it based on which way you wanted it to go. And basically anytime you have something selected with Ultra Hand, you can rotate it with the D-pad. So like, you know, left and right, using left and right on the D-pad, and then up and down or forward and backward with the up and down D-pad. And so you can do that with the platform that I'm talking about as well. So you select the statue, and you can use the gyro controls, but I did not. I used the D-pad, and that made it so it rotated, and I jumped on when I got the platform over to me. So like the island I was trying to get for the video watchers, it's like over here. I'm over here. I had to rotate the platform towards me, jumped on, and I was like, okay, I'll just use Ultra Hand to rotate the platform back. But it was like, oh, if you're on this platform, you can't use Ultra Hand on the statue. So what I ended up having to do is use recall on the statue, which put it back where it originally started, and it got me over to the island.
Hell yeah.
So it's like all these different interactions that you have to take into account.
I'm laughing at myself because you're talking about like stemming the flow of water to solve a puzzle, and it's so stupid, but I'm just like, we can control the flow of water. What does that mean? What are the ramifications? I didn't do that in Breath of the Wild. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so funny, the little things that are getting me excited about this game.
There was another one. The one that like got me really excited was there was a puzzle in the first demo where it was just the first demo was basically like, hey, here are the new mechanics, like go experiment with them. And so there was one where it was like, okay, well, there's a mine cart and it's upside down next to some tracks. And so naturally I wanted to use Ultra Hand, put it on the tracks, turn it right side up. And then I wanted to get to the other side of the tracks, and it was kind of suspended in midair. The tracks were, and it led to like a higher up platform. So I was like getting ready to put like the fan on the back of the minecart, and I looked and I was like, oh, the right track is like missing the entire middle segment of the track. So I was like, all right, well, the fan, if I try to do that, it's just going to fall down and it's not going to work. So I took rockets and attached it to the minecart, and it made it so basically brute forced it. Like it even hopped the rails when I was going on, and I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And it ended up like jumping the rail, and I landed on the platform I was trying for, but I was like pretty dicey proposition. And I was like, okay, well, that was cool. And then I cast, I keep saying I want to say cast recall, but like I mean, I guess you could call it like a magic spell. But like I used recall on the minecart, and it went right back to the track where it started. So if I wanted to do anything else with it, I could. But then like afterwards, the thing that got me so excited was comparing notes with other people because there was like 5 or 6 other media members at my session, and we all like, some of them did it a similar way as I did. Other people did it completely different, where there was like a hook, and they took the hook, Ultra handed it to the minecart, attached the hook to the one rail that was fully intact, and then attached a fan or a rocket to the back of that, and that like acted like almost like a gondola up to the next platform. And it's like, this is just such like basic stuff. I can't wait to see like kind of the ways that people on YouTube or like you guys end up like breaking the physics of this game.
I'm putting a lot of faith in us, Brian.
That's why I mentioned YouTube first.
Dang. Oh, this sounds so good.
Are you gonna play this? I mean, I don't know.
I have a question about Ascend, which is one of the abilities.
Yes.
Where if you have a ceiling above you, you shoot upward and swim through the surface and emerge on the other side, and you can decide if you want to like
exit.
Exit or not. That little load screen that happens like when you're swimming through the surface, does that change based on like the length of distance that you're traveling, or like, yeah, what was that like?
I mean, I wasn't inside a whole bunch of structures, so I only used Ascend a few times, but it seemed like it was directly related to how far you were ascending.
Okay.
Because like cool. There was one time where it was like, all right, I'm just gonna go on top of like this like pergola, and it was like instantaneous. Like, all right, I just like shot through like this plywood that was my roof, basically.
What's the word?
Oh, did you not even go through the swimming one?
No, it did not even go to like pergola. Okay. Like I don't know, like an outdoor like patio thing.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, Kyle, because I didn't want to seem stupid from not knowing what a pergola is.
I mean, I knew what it was. I just thought maybe you guys didn't. I was like,
oh yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for helping.
I didn't just Google the word.
I thought it was the same thing as a gondola, but I don't know. Pergola.
Did you see? And maybe this is like, you know, they did have some heavy restrictions on exactly what you could talk about and stuff, which I understand. But did you see anything like dungeon-esque or like areas like when you were unlocked? Did you unlock those abilities in the same way you do Breath of the Wild, where you had to go into a little dungeon? I forgot. I can't believe I forgot what the term is. What are they called? The little
shrines?
Dungeons? The shrines. Did you see anything like shrines or anything like that?
I did not. Okay. And I had the abilities unlocked from the start, so I didn't like have to unlock them. Like it started a little bit into the game,
right? You didn't see the opening cutscene or anything.
Correct.
Just like, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, this was 100% like gameplay and mechanics focused. Like I got like zero story, and very little like voices at all.
Gotcha.
What did you hear music wise?
I mean, it seemed kind of par for what we got with Breath of the Wild, where it was like, at least the part I was seeing, where it was like kind of like serene, almost like meditative style music. But then again, I was not fighting Ganondorf for like any like serious threats to my life. So,
Was the standard combat music, was that different? Like, did you recognize it?
I'm pretty sure it was different.
Cool.
Okay. What are some of the craziest things that happen? Like, it's just a result of trying to stick things together. Like,
I mean, the shield fan was probably my favorite. I also decided I was just gonna like put a box onto my shield, and it didn't like a wooden crate, and it didn't really do anything, but it looked real dumb, like having Link run around with a shield on his back, and it's like just a wooden crate. I don't know if the shield broke, if it would have like dropped whatever item was inside that crate, but that would be really funny if it did. I didn't have enough encounters to have that happen.
does Link have like a sister that you can shrink down and put in that box that you carry on your back?
Is this a reference to Eco or what?
No, it's a reference to the anime Demon Slayer.
Oh, okay.
Someone will get it. Someone in the comments will be like, I know what you're talking about, Kyle.
That was a pergola moment for me.
Man.
But yeah, I guess it does do like a little swimming animation when you do ascend, but it's like in the air, like it because Link swims upward from the moment you hit the button.
I just mostly want to know if it like brought up that little green loading screen thing every time.
I think that's only for like really long ascensions.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Just-
like so you used the travel medallion to fast travel a little bit, right?
Did I even use it? I remember
Okay.
placing it like as I island hopped. I almost fell off one time because like I was using Ultra Hand. I tried to build like that little like stone bird glider that we saw in the trailers, and I guess I didn't calculate physics correctly because I put the fans like diagonal so it would go up and like forward, and I guess that was not the way to do it, because as soon as it started, it just like lifted off and then flipped immediately and like sent me falling, and I was like, oh well, I'm gonna get up, and thankfully I had the paraglider, and like I glided over and grabbed the wall and climbed right back up, but I was like, that was a close one, and that was kind of where I realized that like I'm gonna just murder Link in so many fun, spectacular ways by accident.
I can't wait.
Well, the question I was kind of getting at was is loading times. I'm kind of curious if they're comparable or better, if you know what I mean, because that was kind of like, I honestly really didn't have any sort of technical problems with Breath of the Wild. Like even some of the frame rate drops in the dense areas, I didn't really feel like were a major problem. But like I did, deep into the game, fast traveling, I was like, this is loading. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder. I
taking a
remember
little
in
while.
the original, or in the Breath of the Wild, there was a significant, well, to me it felt significant, difference between handheld play and docked play. And I always play in handheld play, and I ran into virtually like no issues. And I remember there being reports of like the hitches were happening in docked mode because it was outputting a higher resolution or whatever to TVs. And I wonder if it'll be the same for Tears of the Kingdom, where handheld's a little bit more smooth, or maybe they've sorted that out.
I
don't
did
know.
not get to play it in handheld. I only got to play it in docked with a Pro controller.
Okay.
Was it a special super fancy Zelda Pro controller?
I don't think the
It was the
I don't
Animal
remember what the
Crossing.
controller. It was the Tears of the Kingdom OLED that I was playing on, but I don't know if the Pro controller was any different. Now that you mention it, I was pretty just focused on the screen.
Fair.
But two other things that were kind of like little tidbits that people would like to know probably is that let me get my embargo information here.
keep that off camera, because I'm sure they don't want it
yeah.
shared. There you go.
There is a feature in the game that streamlines building with Ultra Hand.
Okay.
And
So
then,
templates, maybe something like that,
Also, Korok seeds are back.
as they should be.
Yeah. I
can
wonder
say
what
that.
we're gonna get this time for getting every Korok seed.
I read Brian's written preview of this and saw that you mentioned Korok seeds, and for some reason my first thought was like imagining some horrible reality where it's like if you have save data from getting all the Korok seeds from like the first one, then it like unlocks like just some hell where it's like, yeah, you have to get all 2,000 Korok seeds now to get anything.
Get the good ending.
Real. Yeah.
They end up being the thing that actually takes down Ganondorf.
I have a speculative question. I'm sure this wasn't in your preview, Brian, but I just want to poll you guys. Do we think the story is going to be told via memories again? Or do we think it's going to be more active storytelling?
I think it's going to be more active, but I think there will definitely be memories as they look back, because there's been scenes that look pretty much like flashbacks, right, in some of these trailers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember talking to Onuma about that for the Breath of the Wild cover story back in the day, and it's like it seemed like it was like hand in hand with the sort of approach of like you can do this in any order and any sort of like however you want to do it, right? You can take any dungeon in any order, you can skip all the dungeons, however you want to do this. This is your game to play it as you want, and that includes the story, right? Like you can see as much as or as little of the story as you want in any order you want, and like so I think it will be kind of memories again, just because that worked well if they wanted to sort of keep it that way, where you could tackle it in any order,
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good question. We'll see.
But it does seem like this Link has his memories intact, whereas Link from Breath of the Wild, I mean, it's the same Link, but back then he did not have his memories because of the Shrine of the Resurrection.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. There's so much speculation about the story online, and I almost worry for those people that like I think it's going to be more straightforward than they want it to be. I think there's so many theories online about the Ouroboros and what does that mean, and the sort of idea of repeating futures in the past and all this stuff. And it's like, I bet it's going to be pretty straightforward. I mean, we'll see.
I honestly think it's going to involve Skyward Sword in some way, just because this story appears to be, I mean, and again, this is not from my hands-on preview. This is from like digging up clues in the trailers and everything. But the story seems to be about fixing the Master Sword. Like we've seen the Master Sword's kind of like broken or decayed or corrupted or something in the trailers. And I think that this story is going to be about like forging a new Master Sword or something. And also think about like the sky stuff. There's a lot of parallels in here. And I honestly think that there will be some sort of either at least a parallel, if not like a full-on like, and also take into account that's the game they decided to remaster for Switch, not Wind Waker or Twilight Princess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was true. On a recent All Things Nintendo, Brian. I think I was telling you, you should probably play Skyward Sword before this comes out.
Yeah, let me get right on that.
Come on, man, you got like
this Skyward Sword copy I'm holding in my hand is sealed. I've never played this game.
It's a good game.
I'm gonna play it.
You got like 12 days.
Well, no, I wasn't planning to play beforehand. I think I'm probably go back afterwards.
But even Breath of the Wild had a good bit of Skyward Sword stuff in it. Like you can find a lot of stuff from Skyward Sword in the world. So.
I mean, you could find a lot of stuff from Ocarina and Twilight Princess as well, and a little bit of Wind Waker.
But Skyward Swords were like a little more overt. Like one of the really late game things you can find is the statue from the beginning of Skyward Sword, like underground, and like that kind of stuff is cool, man. I hope there's more stuff like that. I would love to see more. I want to the Twilight Realm. I really want to play a role here. I haven't seen a lot of hints towards that, but like I feel like that's sort of like unexplored stuff for Zelda outside of Twilight Princess.
Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild almost serve as like the culmination of all the timelines, right? Like, because they all diverge after Ocarina of Time into these three distinct timelines, and then Breath of the Wild, at least officially, is like the convergence of all of them. And Tears of the Kingdom is the sequel to that, so theoretically, it's going to, I mean, to this point, conclude and culminate the story of all of those games.
I guess, Kyle, to your point about like the Twilight Realm, there is the kind of recurring Zelda idea of like the Dark World in like, Link to the Past or Twilight Princess or whatever.
Yeah.
And this, I think that was a thing a lot of people thought this was going to be at first, is like in like the way back 2019 trailer, you see Hyrule Castle lifting up, and we're like, whoa, this is gonna be like Dark
The
World
Upside Down.
Hyrule. Yeah,
Be a
exactly.
big bunny in this one. It's gonna happen.
So I do, and it does feel like there was a lot of like darker tone, like I don't know. I will be interested like if they kind of touch on that a lot. That's also often, I mean like the Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask thing of like when you go back to the world, it's like a little bit darker, or go back to the mechanics or whatever.
Yeah. Dark Zelda is my favorite Zelda. I like a Zelda that takes itself very seriously. That's what I love. So here's hoping it leans in that direction.
Yeah.
No jokes. I don't want any jokes in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
No
No
funny
humor allowed.
characters.
No
Everyone's
Groose.
very serious.
If I see
No
Tingle,
Grooses.
it's
Get
on
outta here,
site.
Groose. Nobody wants Groose.
Okay, actually though, serious Tingle is the scariest thing you could ever mess with. A guy
Dark
that
Tingle.
Genuinely
Dark
believes
Tingle.
he's Tangle.
Tangle.
Oh
It's just
God.
dilapidated green outfit. He's just like, look, this is all I have to wear. It doesn't reflect my personality.
He's
This is all
wearing
I
like
had in my
monster part
wardrobe."
outfits. Yeah. Woof.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gents, for talking Tears of the Kingdom with me. Shay, thanks for sharing all of your notes and scouring your notebook, answering our weird questions. We're gonna take a break, and then Matt Miller and Marcus Stewart are going to join us to talk Jedi Survivor. All right, we'll be right back right after this. And we are back. Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We got a couple new folks with us now. Marcus Stewart, how you doing? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we missed you in the first half of the show, but
I could feel it.
yeah, you could. Okay, good.
I could feel your longing for me. Is that?
Yeah, it's you probably sensed it in the Force, a disturbance in the
Yeah.
Force.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm not there. Something's wrong.
Yeah. And joining us, special guest. Well, not special guest, but you just haven't been on in a while, Miller. Our
Yeah, I've been
editor in
busy.
chief, our busy editor in chief, Matt Miller. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot.
What have you been
Matt.
doing, Matt? You've been like managing a major publication with millions of
I don't know.
subscribers?
I've mostly just been sitting around playing video games, I think.
Yeah, that's all we
It's-
ever do.
That's all we ever do. I love that response, by the way, whenever I talk to another like adult. You talk to a kid, and they're like, oh, that job sounds cool. You talk to another adult, and they're like, oh, you just play video games all day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you definitely
sure.
feel judged.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
Instant judgment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all good.
Well, we're very glad to have you on the show again. Miller, you've been playing Jedi Survivor. You reviewed it for us. What do you think about it?
Yeah, man, I love this game. I thought it was great. I gave it a 9.25. So right up there in our kind of must play sort of games of the year, I think.
Yeah.
It's a sequel in every sense of the word. I don't think I would advise somebody to be like, oh, I saw sort of like middling impressions of the prior game, so I just didn't play it, but I'm going to jump right in on this one. I don't know that I'd recommend you doing that here. I think it's a good game to like play the prior one first. There's a lot of story grounding, and it is a very story driven and cinematic sort of an experience. So it would be a little bit like saying, I'll just watch Empire Strikes Back, even though I never watched A New Hope, right? I mean, I guess you could do it, but
Yeah.
you're missing out a little bit.
It also continues a new video game tradition of the recap that plays beforehand being borderline useless. Like, okay, thanks. It just says a montage of some characters that this doesn't really explain anything.
Yeah, I mean the previously on that is that sort of new montage tradition that you're describing. It does feel like it's relevant to somebody who like had played the first game. And you're like, oh yeah, there was that character and this other character, and then at the end they did this thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's go. But for somebody who hadn't played Fallen Order, you'd be like, what? Who? When?
You know, it's funny. I made it about, I'd say 50% through Fallen Order.
Yeah.
And in preparation for this game, I was like, well, I need to replay it because I've heard like the ending is really cool and there's some really cool story beats.
Yeah.
And then Marcus decided to kind of lead the charge on the super replay
Sure.
of playing through Fallen Order. I was like, I'm just gonna watch their playthrough.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what I did, and I was like, okay, I got what I needed.
Yeah, there you go. That would be a perfect way to have
do that,
have that experience.
But even if you only have like 20 minutes, at least watch like a YouTube recap, like an actual in-depth one. Because yeah, like you said, it's definitely needed.
I think it is. With that said, this is a game that improves upon and adds more of everything that was good in the first one, and then it does a bunch of other stuff too. It's just like I think it's one that someone could point to as like, this is the way to do a sequel well. It's very clear that Respawn had some great ideas with Fallen Order. I really liked that game, by the way. I even with its faults, there were parts of that game that were like, oh, this was frustrating, or I didn't like this particular style of gameplay. I didn't like sliding down the tree, like those kinds of things. But it was one that I really liked. But here, Respawn has looked at both the critical feedback. I'm sure the fan feedback has done a lot of their own analysis of their own game, and it's very, very clear that the second game is, from a development perspective, feels like a response to those concerns as much as it is like the next part of the story. It's a bigger game. It's much bigger, I would say, and longer game to play through. It has a lot more customization elements, both in terms of cosmetic stuff as well as just play style. There's more lightsaber stances for how you confront combat. There's more there's a perk system now that lets you kind of change up your preferred way to approach combat. And they've also put a lot of work into making you feel invested in the game world, right? So you have a little bit more of a home base this time. You still have your ship, the same ship that you're flying around the galaxy in, but you now have there's like a cantina that you come back to, that it maybe would be an exaggeration to say that it's completely renovating it or anything like that, but you are bringing in new people who are going to come to the cantina. You're building a garden up on the roof. You're filling up an aquarium with fish.
That stuff was so unexpected
fish.
too.
Are you assembling the cantina band? Can you do that?
You do, actually. I don't want to oversell it, but you do. One of the people you can find, it starts out that there's like an old jukebox in the cantina that's like not that great, but you find this person that's like an experimental sound engineer who's traveling around with their droid, and you recruit them to come to the cantina. And once they're there, they're up on stage. The droid's up on stage, like playing songs, and you can actually get both as findables in the world, like in treasure chests, but also one of the vendors sells additional musical tracks that you can add to their repertoire and play different music in the canteen. And so there's a whole playlist of weird Star Wars pop music and rock music and experimental music that's kind of strange.
Now,
Miller, I just want the story to establish that Cal Kestis is responsible for the classic cantina band. Like, he's the one that brought them together.
That'd be amazing.
He brought music to the galaxy.
It's not that cantina band, but it is a cantina band music.
I love that idea, Marcus. It would be like, that scene in Solo, a Star Wars story, where they're like, "Oh, you're by yourself, Solo." It's like they watch that and they're like, "That was really terrible. Let's do a worse version of that and now bring the band together." So I'm glad it's really what you described.
So they did a lot of stuff to kind of help you feel more invested in the game world and in your character. They also, another interesting change is that like that core, there's kind of a core planet that you spend, I don't know, a lot of time on. Kobo, exactly, which is kind of it's sort of Old West inspired, and this is where your cantina is, this little small settlement, and you're branching out to that on that planet to different locales that you have to go on missions for and things like that. And you go off to some other planets like Jeddah, and there's some time on Coruscant and some other places that I won't spoil. So you do go off world. It's not all there, but a lot of it is on this one planet, and it's sort of like a semi-open world space with sort of Metroid-like elements where you're, like you find places that, oh, I can't go there yet. There's a green energy barrier there, so I can't pass that yet. And then you go get, sometime later you get a special power. You come back and you can go through the green energy barrier.
It's funny. I was talking to Jesse Vitelli from Prima Games. And he had a similar, he was like, Kobo's kind of just like its own Metroid Prime game.
It is. It is.
With like all the stuff that you get to see there.
Yeah, I almost think if I'd heard about it extensively ahead of time, I would have been a little worried. Like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but it actually works just fine. Because you're right, it is like on Kobo, it's kind of its own thing. And then the other areas are much more like the levels you had in the prior game, right? Not in a bad way. Just, I mean, they're relatively linear, with some offshoot optional challenges,
shortcuts, all that.
Shortcuts, but it's still, think like the kind of levels that you had in the previous game. And then you come back to Kobo. The only thing that I didn't love about that was that because there's this big focus on Kobo, you do sometimes feel, or at least I did, that you're ping-ponging back and forth, right? You're going to Jeddah, you're coming back to Kobo. You're going to this one moon, you're coming back to Kobo. And I guess it's necessary, right? Because they want you to come back to the cantina and see the people there and turn in the currencies that you've gathered so that you can get rewards and go on new missions there. But I don't know. By the end, I was finding that to not be my favorite part of the game. But the actual semi-open world itself is really cool. Like a lot of cool, sort of interesting optional challenges to uncover, puzzles to take on, sort of like traversal puzzles that you're having to figure out. And beyond that, I mean, it's weird to make this as one of the last things to say, but like, I would say that maybe the biggest win for the game is how much it feels like just a great Star Wars experience. It's a really fun story. They let the characters go in fun directions. They introduce some new characters, but you also get, I think most if not all of the characters you met in the first game are kind of back, and there's things that have happened. It's clear that a significant stretch of time, presumably years, has passed since the end of the last one, and the band's kind of broken up a little bit, and so you're kind of finding people again, and talking to them, but you're also inviting sort of new folks into the mix.
Apparently there's a comic that bridges that gap a little bit.
Sure.
But I haven't read it.
I haven't read that either, but I don't think you would need to worry about that. I mean, it feels like as you start out the story, if you knew what happened in the first game, they do a very natural job of making it feel like, oh, time has passed. This is where Cal is at, and it's fun then to rediscover where all the other familiar characters are at and what's going on for them. And the story that is told. I don't know. It feels. I think in the review I used the word meandering. Like the plot takes a little while to coalesce, and it does feel like the characters are sort of falling into their adventure rather than they're actually getting. They have like this very specific goal right from the beginning, and that's what they're going to do.
I did feel like a little in Kobo, where you go there to meet a former character. Like that's basically the main reason you go there. You end up there, and I was kind of like, surprisingly a lot of amount of stuff happening here, considering I just came here to meet this one guy.
Yes.
Like it's a little bit like that, which is like, okay.
Is it kind of like an old school JRPG, the way you kind of recruit party members in those, or it seems like most of them just sort of, you do one thing for them, and they're like, yeah, I guess I'll follow you for ever, and I don't have any real stakes other than helping you.
I don't think it's quite that bad. I do think that your core characters are invested both in the lead character in Cal, right? Like there's a little bit of a family dynamic that they're playing around with there. And the other characters you meet that get recruited to the cantina, they're not like party members, right? They're not like running around with you and stuff. They're more like,
Right.
Here's this fisherman that I met. I'm going to invite him to bring fish to the aquarium, right? It's that kind of thing. So, but the melodrama and the character moments and these sort of like exciting moments of betrayal or friendship or insight into ancient history of the Star Wars and the Jedi universe. All that stuff is very present and makes for an experience that, like, for anybody who is a Star Wars fan, you'd be like, yeah, this feels good. And that's backed up by getting to play a character who, I mean, they nailed it. Like, they nailed, like, this is in my imagination what it would be like to be a Jedi with Force powers and to be able to, like, run across what seems to be like an impossible path of cliffs and hanging platforms and things like that, and somehow get to the other side, and then chop up a bunch of
Watch out for
stormtroopers at the far
inclines, though.
side.
Cal can
Yeah.
run along a wall, but he can't do like a 40-degree incline.
Those are trouble.
Hey, those are
big
calf
trouble.
burners right there, you know?
Right. I do, Matt. I'm curious with your experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm playing on PlayStation 5. I'm like 4 or
Yeah.
5 hours in. I will say I have been hitting some hitchiness. Like
Yeah.
it's never been enough to really break the game or be a big problem.
Yeah.
It's just like animations are a little funky and like there's clipping and it's just like a little off like consistently. I don't. Did you run in the same thing? I don't know what platform you played on.
I played on PlayStation and I found it to be
Okay.
pretty. My playthrough and the additional time I spent after my playthrough were relatively smooth. I did have some couple of crashes, but they were telegraphed from the review notes. I mean, it's not unusual for anybody else out there to understand that there are things like that we take into account, that as long as they are relatively minor, that a developer can share with us, like, this is a known issue, it's going to be resolved in a patch that's happening at this time, and we try to account for that, right? So there were some things like that weren't major issues. I think I've seen some of the animation kind of hitchiness.
That's what it
that you
is. Like
described.
mainly animation, and it's never like I'm getting stuck or it's breaking the game. It's just like I'll finish off a lightsaber flurry, and then like Cal's ankle will break, and then suddenly realign. And it's like, oh, I guess he's okay.
I've seen a little bit of that. I think I will say something I didn't have I didn't go into great detail with in the review. The animation stuff really did impress me in the game, just through the pure breadth of stuff that you were getting to see. They've gone to a lot of trouble to create a lot of unique combat animations for the different enemies that you're going to fight, so that it adds a sense of realism, that it's like it's different when you're fighting this kind of monster versus a stormtrooper versus a droid, let's say, and they each have kind of unique ways that your weapons interact with them, and so there's a little bit of with that many animations, I think it would almost be a surprise to me if there weren't a few things that were a little bit kind of got off. But I'm like you, Kyle. It rarely, if ever, impacted my experience negatively.
Yeah, just
right?
a little distracting.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
say. I was just gonna say on that subject. I played on PC and ran into more issues, which is kind of natural on PC. There's so many different variables at play.
Sure.
I didn't have any crashes or anything like that. I did have, and it seemed to be mostly in the first like 4 hours. It's kind of stopped for the most part, but about 50% of my cutscenes in like the first 4 hours, at some point in the cutscene, characters would start repeating their lines twice.
Weird.
Which is that took me out of the experience. I was still able to like figure out what was
They
happening.
explained that in an episode of the Clone Wars, dude. Like that's canon.
And I'm hoping that will be resolved with like there's a big patch coming. I didn't see it in their patch notes, but that stuff can be affected by like oh, this one line of code made this happen, you know? So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I kind of forgave all of that because I was having so much fun playing the game. Like, I think I think the first game actually was, you know, it didn't grab me as much as this one did. I think this game's like really confident and like knows what it is from the get-go. And I feel like the first game kind of struggled with like, okay, how do we do Star Wars and also like this kind of Dark Soulsy thing and kind of Metroid thing. And I feel like this game, just from the jump, it is really solid. And I think like I was just instantly grabbed by it. And so when those hitches came up, I was like, okay, it is what it is. I just want to see what happens next, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in the first game, it was a little more debilitating towards the experience. But Marcus, I interrupted you a couple minutes ago. What were you gonna say or ask?
Well, I wanted to know because my biggest criticism of the first game, and this was refreshed when I replayed it for the Super Replay last year, was just the level design and the map was more confusing than I would have liked. And it, like the first game isn't, despite being a Metroid game, it's not the most backtracker friendly.
Yeah.
And like, you know, they would send you into a world and then you run through it and they're like, okay, now you got to go all the way back to your ship so you can leave. And you're like, I don't think there's enough shortcuts here to make this not a pain. Or if I want to come back later with a new ability, it's like, you got to go like 3 floors in. You're like, can I just fast travel or anything? Is that better this time? Like, is the map better this time?
I'm happy to tell you, Marcus, that is all much better this time.
Oh, thank God.
It is not 100% resolved, I would say. That, like, I do still find that the complexity of that 3D map, and I don't know, I might argue the complexity of almost any 3D map that has big complicated levels when you have a mapping system, it's hard to do well.
It looks cool, but it's
cool.
just
it's hard to it can be hard to navigate. I think it's better than it was last time. But the addition of fast travel between meditation points is a huge win.
Oh yeah, that's the one thing I was screaming about in the first game.
No, that's 100% there. And if you don't want it, if you're like some purist that like I like backtracking through this whole thing, then sure, you can do that. In a lot of cases, there are more shortcuts now, and it's more it's easier to get back to the beginning than it used to be in most cases. If you didn't want to fast travel, but you can also hop to a meditation point and just kind of do it that way. So like navigation across the board in that sense is stronger, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are lightsabers deadlier now? Is dismemberment more of a thing this time, or is it still kind of like a selective sword / baton depending on who you're fighting?
I will say that you know one of the things I quite liked about the game that a lot of these kind of action games don't do, you sometimes have the weird excuse where it's like, I am the big bad villain and I'm stripping away all your powers and now you got to start over, right? Like, or whatever their weird excuse is. They don't have that here. So when you start out, you have a bunch of awesome, I'm a Jedi Knight, force powers and lightsaber tricks at your disposal. You have your double jump flip thing that took forever for you to get in the last game. You have your force push and pull and all those kind of things right from the start. And your lightsaber, I think, right from the jump is deadlier. There's still plenty of times that you're hacking away at guys. But I think they've put a greater focus in the combat on defense and like needing to optimize. Like if you block this person's attack and you lower their block meter first before you go into like hack at them, or you dodge out of the way of an unblockable attack and you come at them from the side after your dodge, like that's how you're going to get your kills. Just little pro tip, if you're starting on the game, just get that thing on lock right away. Like get that defense stuff figured out right away, because it is not an easy game. I was playing on the sort of standard difficulty, and while I wouldn't like stack it up, like it's not like a From Software Souls game in terms of difficulty here, later bosses in particular, and even some of the later like just big enemies, if you don't know how to defend yourself, you're going to die. Because there's a lot of things that hit you very hard. There's some things later in the game that are one-hit kills, no matter what your health is at. And it's going to be a much more satisfying combat experience if you like figure out how to like do those parries and how to recognize when they're going to flash red and you're going to dodge out of the way. You just figure that out right away.
Some enemies will flash blue, and you can use the force to fight them in a new way. I'm not sure if that was in the first game.
I don't remember that being in the first game. If it was.
No.
For instance, there's like a large animal that will try to roll over on you, and when they kind of telegraph it by they'll flash blue for a second. And before they roll over you, if you force push them, you'll like knock them over on their side and they'll become vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I really liked that.
So I don't know. I mean, you're still. If the broader question is like, do lightsabers always instantly kill? The answer is no. You still.
But I do think more limbs are flying off, though.
Yeah.
Like I think
because no limbs flew off before.
Yeah, I think Disney finally acquiesced and was like, all right, fine, you can cut off some stormtrooper arms.
Well, I would say that it is they do some thoughtful cutting to not show gruesome things happening, but there are a lot of scenes where it's like, well, that guy just got his head chopped off, right? Like, I didn't see it happen, but like I see the top of his head over here and I see his body's over there, so we know what happened there, right? It's a game that feels like it's pushing at the boundaries a little bit of that T rating sometimes. But one other thing I'll add, Marcus, in response to your question, is that after you beat the game, it also unlocks a new mode where everything is deadlier.
Okay.
Where you are deadlier, like your lightsaber does a lot more damage and often one-hit kill stuff, but so does everything else. And so I sense that was a nod to people who maybe, like yourself, were looking for a slightly different Star Wars fantasy, right? Who were looking for like, I got like a laser sword here. I want it to like destroy stuff.
Yeah, it's like you just wanted to feel like a lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as a first standard playthrough, if you had it that way, I can understand why maybe they wouldn't have done that, because it would, for one thing, potentially really shorten the game. It would also maybe make it really hard because there's a lot of things in this game that have lightsabers or other deadly weapons that would take you out pretty quick. But I like that compromise to be like, okay, you've played through it now. If you want to try it now with this much more sort of lethal understanding of combat, you can go do that. It's kind of neat.
Okay, that's cool.
Awesome. Anything else you want to touch on, Matt, before we move on?
I don't think so. I mean, the big takeaway for me was that it was like this is a great Star Wars game. I mean, it's we all have our rose-tinted glasses on about the Star Wars games we grew up playing, and maybe that's different for different people. But if I'm just speaking for myself, if I'm honest with myself, most of those games that I loved growing up are not as great anymore, right? Like most of those Star Wars games, like probably would not hold up to,
except for Shadows of the Empire. That game's still,
which is perfect. And has
Jedi Power Battle. Okay.
Yeah, Jedi Power Battle,
that's the
perfect game. But barring those, a lot of those Star Wars games just aren't maybe what they once were, and so just on an objective level, this is definitely up there among the best Star Wars interactive experiences you can have. I mean, it hits something that anybody who's even remotely a fan of Star Wars has that fantasy of like, I want to be a Jedi, I want to have force powers, I want a lightsaber, and it hits that. And it tells a cool story in that universe that feels true to the fiction, plays around with some really cool themes and ideas within that fiction, including what I often find to be one of the most interesting dynamics that Star Wars stories sometimes play with, which is the idea of like love and attachment and what that means and why both are different from one another, and also how they can be dangerous and how they can like cause you to make decisions that are different than you would have made otherwise. And that's very central to the story of like Anakin and Padme and all that kind of stuff that is part of the Skywalker saga. But here they leverage that concept and that theme in a really cool way and have something interesting to say about it, which I really liked. So I think it's one people should check out. Check the first game out first, or watch someone playing it, like the Super Replay that we got. But find a way to like get up to speed, and then dive into this, because it's a great time.
Yeah. Just closing thoughts I wanted to share real quick. As I feel like I am, unfortunately, I grew up with the Star Wars, right? And it was my favorite IP for a very long time. In 2023, I'm largely checked out of Star Wars, pretty much besides Mandalorian. But I tweeted about this. Jedi Survivor kind of challenges that disinterest. I think its worlds are really well realized. And I think my favorite part of the game is the exploration and the traversal. I think all of the platforming challenges are, whenever I'm doing that, the game is at its best, in my opinion. And the puzzles, like I think if you took out the combat out of this game, I would still really, really like it. Like if I was just like a smuggler who was, wall running and getting in and getting out, and, or somebody like a cartographer charting new planets, like it would still be a really fun game. Which I think speaks to like the individual strengths of each of those kind of pillars of the experience. But yeah. Well, let's move on. Marcus, you've been playing Horizon. What's the DLC called? The Burning Shores.
Burning Shores.
Okay.
Frozen Burning Shores.
The Frozen Burning Shores.
Frozen was the last.
The
DLC.
Icy Hot DLC.
Yeah, this continues their tradition of temperature based DLCs.
I think they've sort of expanded that.
Windy,
at this point, right?
the Windy Mountains will be the third game.
Tepid.
Yeah, it would have to just be tepid, like right in the middle, like the totally temperate shores.
Room temperature.
Yeah.
Which is, hey, that's about how I feel.
Sounds
about
pretty
Horizon.
nice.
The mild mountains. How is it, Marcus? Well, I know I was watching MinMax cohort Janet Garcia play this game on stream, and I saw she had a big skiff that she was riding waves on. I know that's a big feature, but kind of like what's going on in this DLC? How is it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fun. It's more of that game as you might expect. It doesn't introduce a ton of like dramatic changes to it. Sort of just gives you a nice dessert, kind of wrap up the main course of the campaign. But I will say that this expansion feels a lot more important than the last game's expansion, Frozen Wilds, which I thought was good, but it was like, it's more of a side story. It doesn't really advance too much of that game's plot, so it was skippable. Whereas this game, because it takes place immediately after the main campaign ends, and you have to have beaten the game to start the DLC because of that, there's a lot more like relevant plot advancements where this feels a lot more like required playing to get ready for the third game, because they definitely provide a bit of a peek into what that third game potentially will be in terms of like how it will play out narratively.
That's interesting, because like not to spoil anything, but the third game definitely drops something at the end that was
or the second game,
or the second game, where you're kind of like, feels like I should have learned about this earlier. Like this feels like a lot of stuff happening here at the end.
Yeah,
like
it's
it almost
essentially
felt
a
like the
cliffhanger.
last 30 minutes of Horizon Zero Dawn is like, get ready for the third one. It's like, I'm still playing the second one, guys.
Yeah, like the second game ends on basically a bit of a cliffhanger. I don't know if this is going to be tricky to talk about, because the expansion, like the main threat, very much builds upon the main threat of the second game, which in itself is like a mild spoiler. Maybe not so much now because the game's been out over a year, but if you know what the primary threat of the second game is, Burning Shores has more of that. I'm trying to be
I think you nailed it, man.
I mean, I think here's the thing is that like I think Burning Shores being what it is in the way that you're describing does give an opportunity for people to like as it being a natural outgrowth of the end of the second game. I suspect that might have been purposeful as a way to I don't know, get more people in the front door of that second game, and then have something like a new motivation to get people to do that. Because as I think as a group we've all observed, that was a game that had some bad luck at launch last year, right? I mean, like, generally speaking, I think most people I talk to have positive things to say about Horizon's second game, but it was kind of out at that same time that like Elden Ring was kind of burning things up, and God of War was kind of a big thing that kept people last year from diving into a big project game like this. And I think there were a lot of folks that kind of like maybe missed it, right? And so I wonder if Burning Shores doesn't offer a chance to bring people into that.
Well, I mean, that's the tricky thing about that is that you have to have beaten the game to get to this. So if you didn't finish the game and you want to play Burning Shores, you have to go back.
You have to go back and play the whole thing.
So yeah, you have to have that motivation too. And Forbidden West is not a short game. And also the bummer about that is if you're a PlayStation 4 player, this expansion is a PS5 exclusive.
Yeah.
So
really?
that's
Oh.
which is sad because, like I said before, this expansion does feel important of like sort of bridging the gap between what this and the upcoming third game of like, oh, okay, I have a better idea of what that third game's gonna look like, and also just sort of putting a bow on the stuff that happened in Forbidden West. It stinks that PS4 players will have to watch that on YouTube if they don't pick up a PS5 in the near future.
Yeah.
That said, it is fun. I think the story takes Aloy to Los Angeles, which looks amazing, like the rest of that game does. Every time I boot up Horizon, even when I was like actively playing it when it launched last year, it's always kind of slaps me in the face with how absolutely amazing everything looks. You're like, this game feels like it shouldn't be real with how like high the fidelity is and that it runs as well as it does, and just seeing these fractured islands that used to make up Hollywood and seeing all the recognizable, like, oh, there's LAX airport, like just it's its own little island and it's destroyed and it's surrounded by these aircrafts, or going to the Griffith Observatory and of course the Hollywood sign. It's just like, it seemed like all these molten lava rivers, pouring into the sea. It looks awesome. And it's also just a nice visual change of pace from just the sort of different biomes from the base game. Alex, you mentioned before that you get a skiff, which is like this motorized boat, which is cool, but honestly, I never really used it outside of the required segments because at the end of the game, of the base game, you have a flying mount. And there's a reason why you don't get it until the last hour, not even hour, but like the last act of the main game, is that you don't need to use anything else outside of fast travel when you can just fly everywhere. Yeah. And this expansion actually encourages you to use your flying mount more because the game has a lot more verticality. There's a bunch of, downtown LA that's still standing barely, and they actually situate a lot of secrets and like even entrances to, I guess, dungeons on like the roofs or like the upper levels of these things. So they're telling you to fly around to like, hey, keep an eye out. There's like giant treasure caches that your water wing or your sun wing can grab and drop. There's doors that the flying mounts can rip open. And so, you're like, okay, I'm just going to fly around so I can keep an eye on this stuff. But also, one, it's just cool to do that. And the skiff is comparatively kind of slow when you can just fly everywhere, and also you can only access it at certain docks, whereas your bird, you can just whistle and it'll just show up and pick you up anywhere. So I was like, oh, this is cool, but it is completely overshadowed by the fact that you can fly now, so I'm not gonna, why would I ever use it? But with that said, I think my favorite thing about this expansion is the story stuff. You meet a new companion named Seika, who is part of the Quinn. This expansion pretty much focuses exclusively on the Quinn, who was was my favorite faction in Forbidden West. You meet them kind of during the second half of the main game. They're from like the a far off land, like they're not based in North America. We don't know where they're from, but they're definitely like from another continent. You get to meet like another band of them, separate from the ones or the group that you met in the base game. And Seika is part of that group. And she's sort of the catalyst for the story. I think she's a really cool character. Honestly, she's up there now with among my favorite characters of the series. And I don't think the Horizon games have a ton of like genuinely great characters, in my opinion. There's like a handful that I'm like, yeah, I get down with them. She's probably like top 3 now. Right. And they seem to be setting her up for maybe something bigger down the line. At least I hope so, because like I said, she pretty much drives the plot in this game. She sticks with you throughout the expansion, which is great for combat because she's a pretty capable AI partner. One of my favorite things about her is that she uses her rope caster a lot. So she'll like tie down machines for you, and, you know, leaves them vulnerable for you to get in and do finishing moves or just to target machine parts that you need. Outside of battle, there's some pretty cool cooperative based puzzles, especially in the early stages of the expansion, where it almost feels like you're playing like a single player, like an It Takes Two or something, where you're going through areas and then you're like creating platforming paths for each other. Like there's a segment where you're using a siege weapon to shoot bolts on like cliff faces that the other one can climb up to another perch, and then they use a siege, and then you do it for them, and you're like waiting for her to do it. Of like, yeah, I'm gonna wait here, she's gonna climb up, then she gets on it, shoots some stuff, and then I climb up. And it honestly, it feels, you could be tricked into thinking you're playing with like another person. Like it works that well. I wish there were more of them, because they kind of fade out after maybe the first half of the expansion, which overall it's like roughly 10 hours, I'd say it took me to get through, between that and doing all the side missions, of which there's only like a small handful of side stuff. But yeah, I like that. The combat isn't dramatically different. You do get one pretty powerful new weapon about midway through, but other than that, they introduce like a new slate of legendary weapons or legendary versions of your existing weapons, of like, oh, here's a new bow, here's a new rope caster, here's a new like bomb sling, whatever it is, as well as some new armor sets. There's a resource called Brimstone that's new, and you pretty much have to collect that to get the new legendaries, but they're all over the place, which is nice, and they're not terribly hard to find. So I managed to get most of all the new stuff relatively quickly. That was kind of one of my main things I was doing outside of the missions, was just kind of seeking those out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. It's just like a fun, tightly written sort of, like I said, like an epilogue, but that feels meaningful. Like I don't want to get into too many story stuff, but I think the story stuff is good and compelling. There's some like fun twist in there. I think the final boss is really cool. It might be, honestly, it's probably cooler than the final boss of the main game, now that I think about it. And again, it has me, like, I think the ending of Forbidden West, the main campaign, I thought was really cool, and it was very like eyebrow raising. And then this expansion sort of like has me even more excited to see how Alo and her friends tackle what's next. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you enjoyed that first game. I gave it an 8. My review should be live on the site now. And you know, the best thing about this expansion is that it's a few weeks before Zelda, so it doesn't have to worry about that again.
It's
Now-
tradition to release Horizon right around some hugely impactful open world game.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I guess Star Wars is out.
It does,
now.
yeah.
Maybe
They do
that
have
one's-
to compete with Star Wars.
I asked you this question about Dead Island 2 last week. I'm going to ask the same thing about the Horizon, the series. Where do they go next? Where do they take the fight next? Is it Hawaii?
Is there?
is there-
West?
So what's funny is that I actually, again, because of the way the
Back to the
DLC
east.
ends, and like I actually have a solid idea of where they go geographically.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll ask
will
the
say,
rest
but
of the crew.
Okay.
I don't want to tempt you to spoil it.
Where's Mount Rushmore? Is that North Dakota or South Dakota?
That's South Dakota.
South Dakota.
I tried to
Let's
drive
look
there
at
on my
climbing on Mount Rushmore.
when I
reference-
moved to Minneapolis, I drove like 5 hours out of my way to go to Mount Rushmore, and we got there and it was on fire. And so,
what?
yeah, we kept driving. There's a
Burning
wildfire.
Rushmore?
You mean the surrounding forest, not the actual statue?
Yeah, the statue wasn't burning.
The carving. is
The
on
mountain
fire.
was not on fire. I think that would be like some sort of like biblical implication.
That'd
If
be
the,
something out of a Horizon
the burning rock.
Someone
Yeah.
just dumped a bunch of gasoline on it, and
I mean, I like the idea of just like Aloy only knows how to go west. Like she's got a compass, and she's like, I guess I figured out everything that's happening here, and I'm on the shore of the Pacific Ocean, so I guess I'm just gonna have to learn how to swim.
Horizon down under.
Yeah, so we just
There we
keep
go.
going west. So
I mean, East Coast would be cool. I mean, the first game's in Colorado, and then
yeah, Colorado, like Utah, right? Like Colorado, Utah areas and that.
yeah, and then obviously the sequel's in Cali. So
Yeah.
what's
Aloy
out
takes
east?
on the Big Apple.
Yeah, hell yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, my personal wish list has always been to leave North America and see. I would like to see how the rest of the world has changed. Like I said, the Quinn has been the only sort of glimpse of what is out beyond the United States. So I would love to just see their like homeland. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kyle, I think you need to get out of here, don't you?
Yeah, I'm peacing out, but I had a great time. It was nice to be on a podcast with you again, Matt. It's been years, probably.
For you and I
line up.
specifically, it's been a long
Yeah.
time. It used to be Kyle and I all the time would be on in the olden days, would be on podcasts all the time. But I don't think since you've been back working with us that I've been on with you. So
No.
it's fun.
You guys got to do more than just play games sometimes,
That's right. I just got to stop being so lazy.
Well, you guys enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, we are back. Kyle had to jump and go handle some business. So now me, Matt, and Marcus are finishing out the show. We're going to answer your questions about Jedi Survivor. But first, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to share with you. As we said at the top of the episode, just wanted to remind you that single issues of Game Informer are now available to purchase for $5.99 each. We have available our Resident Evil 4 cover, our Dead Island 2 cover, and our indie issue featuring Sea of Stars, and our Diablo 4 cover is coming soon. If you'd like to purchase singular issues, go over to GameStop.com/GameInformer. And currently at the bottom of the page is where those are sitting. And yeah, you can grab them for $5.99. It's a great way to support Game Informer if you don't have a subscription, or maybe somebody in your life you want to share a certain issue with. That's a great way to do it without having to sign them up for, a whole annual subscription and all that. You can just get those singular issues. And yeah, we hope you're excited about it. Let us know what you think. And yeah, don't forget, follow this crew here. You can follow them on, well, Matt's not really on social media, but he's got a Twitter handle that he posts about tabletop stuff on a couple times a year. You can follow him at Matthew R. Miller. You can follow Marcus at Marcus Stewart 7, Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard, and you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Don't forget to go and listen to All Things Nintendo, which is you guessed it, our podcast about all things Nintendo. It comes out every Friday. It's hosted by our online content director, Brian Shea, and it's a great listen. So if you enjoy this show and you want more from Game Informer, go and check those episodes out. Lastly, thank you to Matt Storm, aka DJ Stormageddon. They are our podcast editor, and you should go check out their podcast. They host a general gaming podcast called Fun and Games, and then if you're a BioWare fan, they host the show called Reignite, which is all about Mass Effect, BioWare, Dragon Age, all that fun stuff.
Alex, can I quickly also plug our our Super Replay, our new one?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Kyle and I are playing Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts every Friday. On our Twitch at 2
I
p.m.
love that y'all are
Central.
playing that, by the way. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm on the sticks for this. Actually, the reason I wanted to play it is because of Zelda, just because of the Ultra Hand and the fusing stuff. It kept getting nuts and bolts comparisons, and I've never played that game, but I've always been curious. I was like, oh, what a great time to finally see what people are talking about. This is like a weird soft training for Tears of the Kingdom, but we have 2 episodes up. Third episode will be this Friday. I'm enjoying it so far. It's a rad game.
That's awesome. I've watched a little bit of your streams. I'm excited to go and watch the VODs. If people want to watch those, youtube.com/Game Informer shows. or watch live on Twitch on Fridays, twitch.tv/Game Informer.
And our TikTok. Kyle's been making some fun clips.
We got a lot of
replays.
irons in the fire here at Game Informer. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot that you can do to keep up with us. Like joining our Discord, which you get access to by subscribing one time to our Twitch channel. And that's where you can leave us questions for the Game Informer show if you don't want to send us an email. If you do want to send us an email, it's podcast@gameinformer.com. This week, it looks like we've got all Discord questions. They're all about Jedi Survivor. So let's get into it. Matt, Snake Eater 1964 would like to know, does Cal still have a poncho?
Cal has a bunch of options now.
He's got a mullet, at least in my version of the game.
He's much more customizable this time. I think you can still he still has a jacket option, so you could poncho that up, I guess. I didn't really have him dressed in a poncho myself.
I had him dressed in a cape.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
A cape?
Yeah. There's a cape. I also had a variations of cape. He has a one of the outfits I had him in for a while. He was looking a little bit like one of those Jedi in the Clone Wars, where he has like the shoulder armor.
Oh
pieces.
yeah.
He looks looking pretty cool there.
Did you feel weird about like giving him different facial hair and hairstyles?
I eventually settled on like, this is his look. This is what he looks like now, and I left it there.
Okay, yeah.
Like the default?
Yeah, well, this is like, it took me a while to find it, and then I was like, okay, this is my Cal, and this is what his lightsaber looks like, and this is what he's wearing, and I kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
And felt good about it, but I quite liked the customization stuff, because I remember in the first game feeling like I didn't love his like look, personally, and I was like, I wish I could like have him be different. And now I can.
That's cool.
This was one thing I didn't have time to mess around with, but there is upon beating the game, it unlocks a mode where every time you die, it randomly recustomizes your look for Cal.
That's cool.
Based on everything you have unlocked. So you just get like a totally weird, like mixed up.
That's awesome. I like that a lot.
It sounds like Rogue Legacy a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Troidal Power asks, on the broader idea of reviewing sequels, do y'all like to replay the original right beforehand for comparison, or maybe watch a refresher video on the plot, or just go in with your memories?
Yes. It's kind of all of the above for me, depending on what it is.
I would agree with that. We don't talk about it a lot, but we take our reviews very, very seriously, and we try really hard to be as informed and up to speed on stuff as we can, time allowed, for the things that we can. So in this case, for Jedi, I replayed the entire first game just like a month ago, because I knew that we talk, especially for bigger major sequels like this, we often talk ahead of time about like, okay, who's likely to have time to be able to tackle this review, who's got the expertise to do it, that kind of thing, and that gives us the flexibility to start doing some of that research ahead of time. So yeah, I took some time and I replayed it, and I think more so than in many games, that was a good call this time, both because getting back up to speed on the characters and what was happening in their stories as that last game concluded was helpful. But it's also more than a lot of sequels does. This game builds on the skill set and the play style that you've established in the first one, and doesn't really like scale you back at all. We talked about this a little earlier in the show, but like you start out and Cal's like a Jedi Knight. He's got all of his stuff. He's got all of his moves. And you're expected... I mean, it does a pretty good job of onboarding you, I think, and helping you get up to speed. But you're expected to pretty much right away go into, like, I know how to block. I know how to dodge. I know how to parry. I know how to light attack versus heavy attack. I know when to use force, push, that kind of stuff. Like, you want to be using all the tools at your disposal.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that philosophy kind of stretches to all of our content. I mean, our cover stories have a lot of research that go into them most of the time. Wes, when he was writing the Dead Island 2 cover story, he went and replayed a lot of the first game. You know, it's kind of like it's a big part of the job, just to make sure you're fully informed on and you're able to speak to, you know, those audiences and cover those products with expertise, like Matt said. All right, next question is from Pandas with Bombs. What would you say is the biggest improvement from the original? And considering how it's going with Respawn going from multiplayer shooters to single player adventure games versus Rocksteady with Justice League, do you think more game studios should try to make a change?
Okay, well, so on the first one, biggest improvement, I think the navigation stuff, just in terms of overall flow and experience, that's probably one of the most significant ones. I think for anybody who played the first game, the backtracking and the getting confused about where you were and how to get back where you wanted to get to was a problem. I mean, it was an issue with that first game that made it less enjoyable, I think. And even when they tried to include new elements as part of that backtracking, like, oh, surprise, surprise, there's a boss fight that you didn't know was going to be here, it still felt frequently like you're kind of just confused, or I lost sometimes. And this is largely between the fast travel stuff and more thoughtful level design that has been resolved. The other things are more just advancements. I think a lot of the other things are like, this is better than it used to be. I think combat and dueling feels better. I think the traversal mechanics feel better, and there's more interesting traversal puzzles and challenges to solve for. I think the storytelling is and the dialogue is better. And so I talked about it in my review, but like I think this is like what you want out of a sequel. You've seen what was good in the first one. We're going to keep that, and we're going to make everything else that wasn't as good as it could be better.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think in terms of your second question, I think it's always cool to see people try new things, you know, whether it pans out or not. I think that kind of stuff breeds creativity and breeds new ideas versus kind of resting on your laurels. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
To sort of expand on your question, do you guys have a favorite example of a studio doing something totally different?
Respawn's up there. I really liked the way that they shifted direction and the way they helped to find something new about their identity.
I mean, they've kind of done that several times now. I mean, you know, if you want to count leaving Infinity Ward and kind of starting up a new studio, doing Titanfall, which was very much a new sort of way to approach FPS games, and they really helped to continue the momentum of the battle royale genre with Apex Legends, and then they turned to single player stuff with Star Wars. I feel like they're really good about that.
Yeah, agreed. I think another one I might point to would be I don't know if I'd say it's a favorite, and I'll explain why, but Housemarque did a big pivot with Returnal from their focus on like kind of arcade style stuff. The only reason I say that it's not my favorite is that like I'm quite ambivalent about that. I think Returnal is an awesome game, and it clearly was a good decision for their studio from a business perspective of like putting them more centrally on gamers' radars as like a really great studio. But I also really love their arcade games. So like their arcade style games and their approach to some of that stuff, their like twin stick shooter kind of thing. And I'm sure after the success of Returnal, we probably won't see a lot more of that from them. Which is too bad.
I think Blizzard has always done a great job at, switching focuses. I mean, RTS, FPS, MMO, card games, MOBAs. They've kind of done it all, and now they're working on a survival game. They just kind of, as a company, seem to find something that interests them and then just go after it and try to make it, the best possible version of that thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think a smaller call out might be Tango Gameworks.
Hmm.
You know, they did those
Mhm.
two Evil Within games, which are very much sort of Resident Evil 4 inspired horror games. Then Ghostwire Tokyo being more of a first person, almost kind of like Far Cry ish like experience. And then now we got Hi-Fi Rush, which is this like rhythm based, colorful third person action game.
Mhm.
Pretty much all their big stuff has been very different from each other. And then, you know, Hi-Fi Rush being the most different, at least tonally. So yeah, I think it's always cool to see people make stuff. I get more excited about an established studio doing something different, even if it maybe doesn't look immediately amazing. But I'm still like, oh, it's cool. Like, it's cool to see them giving it a shot. Like, Naughty Dog is a studio I would like to see,
Yeah.
for example, do something completely out of their wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's an unusual thing. I mean, having had the good fortune and the opportunity to spend time with a lot of different developers over the years and visit a lot of studios, I think there are some places that are more set up to have that kind of flexibility and to move into fundamentally new directions than other places. And then that's not necessarily a commentary on their quality. Sometimes it's that. The studio that has been built around, we are going to be the very best we possibly can at this one thing. And we're going to bring in the best talent we can that knows how to do that one thing. So the idea of, well, we're going to shift from being like a, multiplayer focused shooter team to being, a storytelling adventure game team is often, well, that's not leveraging the talent that they have in the studio that they've built everything around. Whereas other times, I suspect that when you see these shifts, like you saw with Respawn or with Housemarque or some of the other studios that we're talking about here, it's because the unique formulation of team members that they had on board were ready to, we're pushing for something different and we're ready to try something different.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great answer. We have a couple questions left. we have more than a couple. I'm gonna pick two real quick.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll answer the rest next week. So Jay Herb, you have a very interesting question about RTS games. We're gonna save that for next week for a larger discussion. Pratable has a very quick question that I'm gonna answer. They're just asking, what is the expected game length of Jedi Survivor? Marcus and Matt were talking while we were on break. And I think we've kind of come down to, like, if you're really speeding through, you could probably get it done in, about 25 hours is probably a safe bet. But I know for Miller, it was closer to the 40-hour mark. And that's also the hour mark I've heard from a lot of other friends who were reviewing this game. Seems to be like, closer towards 40 if you want like more of a rich, complete experience, A lot
of optional content.
Yeah.
That's worth checking out.
Yeah. And then last question for the whole group here. Judonkadonk in Discord asks, what is a genre or game that you think would work for Star Wars, and what character in Star Wars... oops, it messed up. Sorry. I think they're just asking, what genre game would you think would work for Star Wars, and what character in Star Wars should get their own game? Matt, I wanted to ask this because you are a big Star Wars guy. Are there any games that you're like, man, I really wish we had a Star Wars version of this? And if so, what characters would you want it to center around?
Gosh. I think there's a lot of different directions that haven't been tapped well yet for the Star Wars universe. It does feel like, I mean, we always do these everybody has fond memories of Knights of the Old Republic and, bringing Star Wars into an RPG sphere. That game was a long time ago. And a lot has changed about role-playing game design and that kind of thing. So I think that would be one place that, even though we've seen it before with KOTOR, having something else that explores sort of that role-playing experience would be good. I think a true open world game could be pretty neat too. Mm-hmm. In the vein of something like Elder Scrolls, right?
Sure.
Fallout, where but it's a Star Wars kind of vibe.
Hear me out. Sorry,
What's
but
that?
I want to interrupt you. Hear me out.
Yeah.
A cantina-focused game where it's a rhythm game and you're playing as the cantina band.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
And it's small budget too, you know?
I was gonna say it's funny because I had a rhythm of music idea too. But what if you did Crypt of the Necrodancer but Star Wars theme, and you just got to do like a cool dungeon crawl as like Luke or something, and you're getting like techno remixes of all the awesome Star Wars music.
That's fun.
And you're just killing stormtroopers to the beat, doing a lightsaber duel to the beat.
That's fun.
I think you know what you could do who's the guy Dex the diner guy, do an Overcooked style game.
Oh,
Dex's
that's funny.
Diner.
That's funny.
I mean, you could do a lot of different fun stuff. I don't know. Like as for characters, oh man.
I mean, Mando's got to be like Din Djarin and Mandalorian. He's probably my number one of like he needs a game, right?
Yeah, that could be pretty cool. I think this would be kind of a weird twist, but I think it could be pretty neat to create a game in the style of like the island sim managers where you're like running your own crazy like criminal empire, that kind of thing, but do it like the Emperor Palpatine,
like a
Darth
Tropico
Vader.
or something.
Yeah, like exactly in that vein. But you are having to, like, you finally defeated the Jedi with Order 66. You have reached your goal. You are now the Emperor of the Galaxy. Now you got to try to hold it together.
That's funny, actually.
And not like for funny. Like do like a
serious
like do it as a management of like, how do you hold an empire together?
It's like there's a rat, go get him, and we're gonna execute him.
You're like establishing the Inquisitors and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you'd have to like build up upgrades to your different facilities that were gonna seek out the intelligence you needed for people who were trying to be traitors. And you'd have an apprentice, and maybe it was Vader, but maybe eventually it could be somebody else because Vader tried to overthrow you and you got rid of him, and you have to constantly deal with an apprentice who's trying to like overthrow you secretly but still working for you.
That's
funny.
There's
all sorts of fun stuff you could do there.
Yeah,
I think.
I like that a lot. Well, cool. I think that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Game Informer Show. Matt, Marcus, thank you for joining me. Thank you to everybody out there who asked us questions. Again, if you want to get involved, you can email us at podcast@gameinformer.com with the subject line Game Informer Show question, or you can join the Discord and just ask your question in the Game Informer Show channel. That's going to do it for the week. We will see you all next Thursday. Bye, everybody.